Thank you,
Senator
Mr.
Sullivan.
Chairman, and thank my colleague from New York. I'm going to go preside here in a minute, so thanks for the flop. And I want to thank the chairman and the ranking member on the holding this hearing and the witnesses. I think this is a really great topic. I think, and it's also great to have a little bit of a heated debate here. And so I appreciate you doing this. I know sometimes it's not easy. You have members of the committee on both sides trying to go after your the incentives for you to be up here testifying, and I'm just gonna say I assume you're all here on good faith on what you believe, and so I really appreciate that. I also want to just echo what my colleague from West Virginia mentioned. I have the utmost respect for my friend from Massachusetts, but holy cow, if he's celebrating the bankruptcy and job loss of hundreds of Americans, we got something wrong going on here, in my view. We shouldn't ever be doing that. So I really want to, I think she was very passionate about what she said and very persuasive. So I certainly hope nobody would, particularly on this committee, be celebrating the job losses and hard times that a lot of Americans, because of the policies of this administration, certainly my state has seen that, are experiencing right now. You know, I just want to touch very quickly, and Father, maybe you can touch on this. You know, we talk a lot about moral imperative. I've been someone who thinks that one of the biggest issues that we don't talk about here in this Congress, Democrats or Republicans, and it relates to these policies we're talking to, is that we can't grow our economy. You know, there's a debate on fossil fuels, Obamacare, we debate everything. There's one issue that's not debatable. The last 8 years, by any historical measure, have had some of the weakest economic growth in U.S. history. Never have broken 3% GDP growth in the entire Obama administration era. Last quarter, I think we grew at 0.1%, and nobody even says anything. Is there a moral imperative to grow the economy and allow for free enterprise and free markets? That's what's made this country strong. Strong, traditional levels of American growth. 3-4% GDP growth, Democrats, Republicans. We can't even come close to it. So you know what they do in Washington now? They dumb it down. They don't say, hey, we need to get back to 3% GDP growth or 4%, which will create opportunities for families, particularly those on the lower ladders of the economic ladder. We just dumb it down and say, oh, this is the new normal. The new normal. We're going to now tell Americans that we can only grow at 1%. Don't worry, you should be satisfied with that. The Secretary of the Treasury never comes out and says, don't worry, America, we grew at 0.1% GDP growth last quarter. I have a plan. Nope, they dumb it down and say, we should just accept that. It's the new normal. Father, what do you think of that? And I'd also like Mr. Epstein to maybe weigh in on that one as well.
Well, I have no doubt that one of the green passages that are underlined in Dr. Nelson's Bible is the command of God to the newly created human family to multiply and have dominion over the world, that the normative way in which we rise out of poverty is through human action. It's through human beings using their intellect, using their freedom, engaging their talents and their risk to produce from the fruits of the earth, because we do not become better off by having natural resources in nature. We become better off by having those resources drawn from nature and placed at human service. And the fossil fuel industry, it seems to me, has been one of those great resources of human betterment on this planet, and the wealth of the United States historically, and indeed the world, has been predicated on that. I find it a dangerously mistaken notion to think, and this may come as a shock to the committee, that the government is the source of wealth in this country, or the source of jobs. And I saw that mistaken notion of thinking when the senator from Massachusetts assumed that tax exemptions or credits were tax subsidies. And if you want to resolve that whole problem and have a nice bipartisan approach, remove all of the subsidies and all of the credits from all of the industries and let them compete on the free market that Senator Markey, I think inadvertently, was endorsing.
Mr. Epstein, do you have a view on the issue of how we can't grow the economy, what that does for hope, what that does for poverty, what that does for the outlook for the American family?
I think one of the tensions on the committee on this issue is how do you weigh economic growth, and then how do you weigh these kinds of environmental considerations? And this is exactly the kind of consideration that is the subject of philosophy, which Senator Boxer has said is unnecessary, although she thinks religion is necessary to evaluate science, which I don't get. But what philosophy teaches us is how to look at the big picture, and with these issues, the crucial concept, which is in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, is individual rights. We want the policies that protect the rights of individuals to pursue their own flourishing without interference by others. And so if you do it right, what you do is you set scientific, not speculative, but scientific thresholds for things like CO2, where there's no relevant threshold right now, for different kinds of air pollution, for other things. So what you do is you liberate individuals to be as productive as possible while protecting each other's rights. And that's absolutely possible. And if that were done, we would have a thriving economy, because, you know, fracking really slipped by Obama. He didn't really know about it. If he had known about it, he would have probably tried to get it banned. So our prosperity right now depends on the ignorance of our politicians, which is pretty scary. But imagine if we had been free to frack, if we're free to produce energy, we're free in every other sector of the economy while having rational rights protecting environmental laws, we'll grow 5 or 10%.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank again my colleague.